Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Allison and today I have a long overdue knitting podcast episode for you. Once again, it definitely feels like it's been a very long time since I've sat down to just talk about my knits in a regular podcast. The last month has been a little bit crazy. My husband and I were in the south of France for 3 weeks, which was, after a really difficult start to the year, like just the reset we needed, I think. We had absolutely gorgeous weather. We were super lucky. It was sunny and hot basically every single day that we were there. And it was just a great opportunity to, like I said, reset, spend a lot of time relaxing on the beach. We were there visiting my husband's brother and his family, so getting to spend a lot of time with them, getting a lot of FaceTime with our nephew, which was amazing. And yeah, it was just exactly what we needed. And being back now for a week has been, a little bit slow, still trying to get back into routine. But I do have a lot of knitting updates actually, so I am excited to dive into those and share. So for the first time since I think February, I have a finished object, which is very exciting. And those of you who've watched my podcast will have seen this before in various stages, but this is my finished Maggie vest by PetiteKnit. I opted not to wear it today so that I could more easily show it, but it does look a little bit wrinkly. It was in my suitcase. I didn't end up actually wearing it at all the entire trip because it was so hot, and this is 100% superwash merino wool. There was just no way I was going to be wearing something super woolly, even if it is sleeveless. But here she is. I am happy with this for the most part. I've worn it a few times now out and about. My biggest gripe is that I wanted an oversized fit. And at the time that I knit this, my body was changing, so I figured I would go up from my normal size. I went one size up from what I normally knit. I believe this is a large, and for petite knit patterns, I typically will go a small or more often a medium. So it is just a little bit big, I think, because my intention is more to wear this as just a sleeveless top rather than a vest over other items of clothing. I probably could have done with a more close fit. I will insert some photos. These are posed photos where I definitely have it, looking a little bit nicer than it does if it's just hanging flat. I can also take some of those and add those in as well just to show. But overall, it's a great pattern. I would love to knit this again, like I said, in that smaller size, because this one is just a little bit bigger. Of course, I can still wear it as an oversized baggier top, but I think this will also be great for layering in the wintertime over shirts and stuff. I think it's a great Christmas color, for example. So overall, after 3 or 4 wears, I am still enjoying this and trying to figure out ways that I can style it. I have kind of just been defaulting to a plain black midi skirt or plain black pair of shorts, but I think I can get a little bit creative with something like this and, like I said, layer it, not layer it. So I'm definitely looking forward to playing around with my Maggie vest. But yes, the Maggie vest by PetiteKnit, I knitted in a size large, like I mentioned, and the yarn I used for this is from Woolberry Fiber Co. This is the Berry Cozy DK, which is 100% superwash merino wool with nylon. I think it's a 15% nylon. And it's this beautiful color called Weekends at the Cider Mill. I'll turn it back so you can see sort of the color here. It is a hand-dyed semi-solid color, so I initially was going to alternate skeins just to avoid any potential pooling. But after doing that a little bit at the top of the vest, I decided that I didn't really think it was necessary, honestly. I think it looks pretty uniform. So I continued just using one skein at a time, and you really can't tell if there is any discrepancy between the different skeins. So I'm very happy with how that came out. I love this color. And yeah, I love green. Green is one of my favorite colors to knit with, so I definitely have a growing collection of green items in my hand knitted wardrobe. But a nice vest, I think, was just a great addition and something that I have not knit too many of. So all in all, Maggie vest, I know many people have knit this pattern at this point, as well as the Maggie cardigan. I think it's a great pattern, fairly beginner friendly. I mean, there's shaping up at the beginning here, but the rest of it is just flat back and forth the whole way. And then you, of course, add on the ribbing at the end. As for the buttons, I went with these really simple black, plain black buttons that I got at a local fabric store. I was playing with the idea of maybe using gold. I thought that could look kind of cool. And then last minute I chickened out because I thought it might look a little bit too grandma. I don't know. Maybe it would have looked cooler with the gold. I still have the gold buttons, so I could swap them out if ever I decide that I want to. But I think the black is nice. It blends in. It doesn't give too much contrast. Ideally, I think I would have gone with a darker green color, but I couldn't find anything that really matched the tone of this green. So I settled for black. I think it'll do. I notice when I wear it and when I hold it up that there is a little bit of gaping just between these top two buttons here. And so that's something I might go in and just address. I think I maybe sewed the button a little lower than the hole, and so it's giving like this little bunch effect here. But like I said, overall, great pattern. Definitely recommend it. I know many people have knit this pattern at this point, so this is nothing new or exciting that I'm sharing, but just a really good staple to have, and I'm excited to have more vests. For my works in progress, I will start with the thing that I knit. I guess I'll go in chronological order. So what I was knitting on my trip, and then I'll go into stuff that I have picked up again since being back home. So right before going on my trip, the day we left actually, I went to the Knit City Montreal Yarn Festival and I picked up this yarn that I shared in my last video. This beautiful purple wool, or rather it is a blend of merino, yak, and nylon. It is a yak sock yarn. Let's see if I can focus that here. There we go. This is a fingering weight. The brand is Maya Pa, which is a local brand to Montreal, which is very exciting. And I got it in this beautiful lilac-y purple color, which is a new to me color when it comes to knitting. So I was very excited to dive right in. I wound these up right after getting home from the yarn festival, right before getting on our flight. And this was like my main travel project because I wanted something easy stockinette that I could work on the plane that I wouldn't have to fuss with too much. So I settled on the Diane cardigan by Cookie the Knitter. It was a fairly impulsive cast on, I will say. Like I said, I had picked up the yarn that day and I cast on that night at the airport. So it was a pattern that had been on my radar, but not something that was super high up on my queue for that long until I purchased this yarn. So I cast it on with the recommended needle size, which is a 4mm needle. I also had 3mm with me on this trip, just for in case I had reached the ribbing. I wanted to be able to swap out to my smaller needles. I didn't want to bring my whole set just in case. When I landed, I wasn't super happy with the gauge. I thought that the fingering weight on 4mm was a little bit too gapey. And I made some posts on my Instagram about this actually, where I had essentially decided I was going to frog what I had done with the 4mm, cast back on with the 3mm. Ideally, I would have loved to use a 3.5mm, but I did not have those with me. And I didn't feel like going out and buying a new set of needle tips, especially since I already owned 3.5s. I just left them at home. So all that to say, I went ahead, knit a swatch, measured. My gauge was still off, but I figured that to compensate for using the smaller needles, I would go up like 4 sizes. So I was knitting the 2XL. So I cast the 2XL back on the 3mm needles. And this is what I have so far. Oh, it is upside down. And I just want to highlight how gorgeous this yarn is. This one I am alternating because I noticed that there is quite a bit of variance in the color. And when I got home, I put this sort of on hold while I picked up some other projects just to give myself a bit of change of pace after working on this for 3 weeks nonstop. And only minutes before sitting down to film this, I decided to try it on because it's on a barber cord, so why not? And it's really small. Like, I knew that it was knitting up to be a little bit small, and in order to combat that, I added a few rows here and there just to make sure my row gauge was okay. Obviously, I was knitting a few sizes up, so that would have made a difference as well. But I mean, you can probably just tell from the size of this armhole and the size of my upper arms, like this, it's a snug fit, which is really disappointing because this was 3 weeks of work. I mean, admittedly, it's not that much, but I mean, we were on vacation, we were busy, we were doing stuff, we were spending time with family, and considering this is on 3mm needles, like, I feel like I have done a lot of knitting on this, but it's just not worth it for me to knit something that I think is probably going to feel a little bit snug and I'm not going to want to wear. And I just can't waste this beautiful yarn that I spent quite a bit of money on. So I'm going to frog it. I just decided that right before sitting down to film, but I think that's what I have to do in order to be able to give this yarn the project it deserves. My decision was also half made for me when I tried this on and the barber cord popped out of like a whole bunch of stitches here and it started unraveling. So unfortunately, this was not meant to be, but it will become something. I am thinking probably like a light breezy blouse. I know I was having issues with this on the 4mm because I thought it was a little bit too gapey, and the original pattern for the Diane cardigan is made in a fluffier yarn, which would naturally fill out those holes a little better. I guess I would probably lean toward trying to find something I can make with 3.5mm needles. I don't know what the gauge is on the Cumulus blouse, for example, but something like that I think would be a good use for this yarn. I want it to be something kind of light and breezy and just easy to wear on like a cool summer evening or spring or fall. So rest in peace to my Diane cardigan. I am quite sad about this, so I probably won't be rushing to frog this whole thing and cast it back on right away. But hopefully this year at some point, this will become a beautiful project that I will actually enjoy wearing. So because I was sort of having an internal battle about that cardigan, when I got home, I decided to put it aside and focus on some whips that I still had at home, just for a change of pace. And the first one I picked up when I got back was my Paul cardigan. The last time I updated, I believe I was halfway through the first side of the button band here, and I have now completed both sides of the button band. So it doesn't look like too much more progress has been made on this, but if you've knit a double knit button band, you know that this was like a day and a half of work. So completed this side of the button band. This is the side I was working on previously with the 3 buttonholes. And yeah, I just have to go in now and knit the sleeves. Of course, this is very difficult to show on camera. I apologize, but I can include some photos as well of how this is looking on me right now. This is blocked. I wanted to get a better idea when I start knitting the sleeves of how long they need to be, and I find it easier to do that when the shoulder and button band have already been blocked. And I am enjoying how this fits on me. I find it quite boxy, and I did actually knit this to the length specified in the pattern, which is rare for me. Typically I will crop things extra short, but this does still feel quite cropped when I'm wearing it. So I don't know if I need to block it and maybe stretch it out a little bit more, or once I add the sleeves, if I'm going to enjoy the fit a little bit better. The intention for this was to be a big chunky cardigan that will be nice and warm in the colder months. So if it is a little boxy or baggy or oversized on me, that is kind of the intention. And it's why I picked this pattern. So we're going to see how it looks with the sleeves on it. I am really excited to be jumping back into this project. I when we got back, I kind of just said to myself, you are going to sit down and you are going to just bang out this button band and be done with it. And I'm very glad that I did that, because now all I have left is the sleeves, and it should be nice to be doing some sort of mindless stockinette in the round after doing all of this flat knitting on this giant cardigan. Also, I have not yet mentioned, but this is knit out of Sandnes Garn Pure Gynt in the color Spiced Apple. It's this nice kind of rosy pink, dusty pink color. I mentioned in the past, this is my first time using Pure Gynt. I'm enjoying the knitting process. I definitely see what people mean when they say that it gets softer after blocking. By no means would I say that this is a soft yarn. It's definitely very woolly, but it kind of softens and loosens up after you block it, and it gives a nice drape that isn't quite as stiff as it was while actually being knit up. So I'm happy with this so far. I'm excited to see how it's going to look when the sleeves are on and it all comes together. Something I just have to call out on this pattern is the neckline here. I've mentioned in the past, it's like a hybrid neckline. You go in and do this double folded over 2x2 rib. And then when you pick up on the sides for the double knit button band, you connect it to the edge of that rib. And I just think that looks so clean and beautiful. Something about the Paul cardigan, and I would imagine this is the same for all Moreca knit patterns, this is my first that I've knit from them, is that it is extremely well written, very detailed. It really walks you through step by step how to do everything. I was a little bit nervous about this neckline situation just because I had no clue how this was going to come together, but it's extremely clear in the pattern. I never had to second guess anything. So big kudos to Moreca Knit for this design. I feel like it's just so gorgeous and it looks really, really polished when it's finished. And I just love patterns that have this little thoughtful touch of kind of something extra that you don't see often in every pattern. So overall, I'm really enjoying the knitting experience of this. I'm already excited to knit more Moreca Knit patterns, and I am loving the color. And yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a really nice, cozy, chunky cardigan for when the colder weather hits. I know it's not really in season right now to be knitting this, but as much as I want to cast on some warmer weather knits, I'm trying to prioritize getting through at least a few of the whips that I already have on my needles, because this, I believe I cast on in, it's got to be January or February now. And the next one I'm going to talk about has been even longer. So it's going to feel really good, I think, to clear my needles from some of these bigger projects. And then I can, start some more summer knitting with a bit more of a clear conscience and have some new pieces to wear. So yep, that is my Paul cardigan. My last work in progress for today is a blast from the past, because I haven't talked about this on the podcast in quite a few episodes. I finished the body, let it sit for a long time, went back in and did one sleeve, and then let it sit for a long time again. And I have just recently decided to pick up for the second sleeve, and I am now currently knitting the second sleeve. So anyway, a long-winded way to say I am jumping back into my Monday sweater. This is a Petite knit pattern. It's the Monday sweater. I mean, what can I say? I think everyone and their mom has knit this pattern at this point. It is a very simple raglan construction sweater. I am knitting mine with 2 strands held together. The base yarn that I'm using is a 100% superwash merino wool from Knit Picks. It is called Twill. I cannot remember the color, but I will include that. It is something oat adjacent, almond adjacent. And I'm holding it together with a hand-dyed Suri alpaca from Woolberry Fiber Co. Once again, this is the flock colorway. And it's just this speckled Suri alpaca. This is what it looks like in my poorly wound balls. So it is this sort of like oatmeal colored base with some yellow, some red, some even a few little blue flecks in there. There's some green. Just a bunch of different colors kind of subtly speckled throughout this oatmeal colored yarn. And so held with the main yarn I'm using, please don't judge me, this ball fell apart and there's nothing I can do about it. But held with this yarn, I think they go very well together and they result in this beautiful fabric. So my main reservation with this, and the reason that I put it aside for so long, was that I was just unsure of the color and how it would look against my skin tone. I don't often wear beige sort of colors, and I don't know how good they look on me just because I was afraid of it washing me out. I'm definitely coming into this video with quite a bit more of a tan than I had last time just because of the vacation I just took. So I don't know if this ends up looking any different on me right now. But yeah, I was just a little bit unsure, I guess, of the color. I love the color in general, but on me, I just, I don't know how it's going to look. And actually, now that I'm looking at it in the camera, I'm noticing that there's a lot less speckling on the sleeves where it separates from the yoke. So I don't know if that's because the balls I was using up here were more saturated or if I'm just doing a really poor job at alternating my Suri skeins. But I don't know that that's something that's going to be super noticeable to the average naked eye. Something I will say about this is that it is extremely soft, probably the softest thing I've ever knit. This Suri is unreal how soft it is. And I mean, the main yarn I'm using as well, the Merino, is also very soft. And I know that this is going to be such a pleasure to wear. It feels like a cloud for real. Another one that is very out of season, but like I said, this has been on my needles now since, I want to say November, maybe October. So it being June now, I think it's about time that we get this one finished. And like I said, super cozy. I think this will be such a great one to even just wear around the house when it's really cold. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about my Monday sweater. I'm excited to be back on it. I have this much of the sleeve so far, so I picked this up, I guess, yesterday, and that's what I've got. So slowly chugging away at the sleeve and those sleeve decreases. And yeah, I think this will be a very lovely cozy wear once I am finished with it. I will also quickly mention, since I am now going to jump into acquisitions, this little Progress Keeper stitch marker that I've got on here that I acquired in Lyon, France, because we were staying in the south of France, but we took a weekend trip up to Lyon just for a couple days. And I did some shopping there. And one of the things I purchased was this little stitch marker. It is from the brand Firefly Notes. And I just thought it was adorable. I don't usually splurge on notions like this, but I thought this was too cute to pass up. I think it was like €7 or something. So I guess a little pricey for a stitch marker, but as a souvenir and as like a beautiful just piece of art, I really love it. So that's what I've been using to mark where I'm at with my decreases. And yeah, that is all I have to say about my Monday sweater. So as I mentioned, I did a little bit of yarn shopping when we were in Lyon. I actually had put just a question in my Instagram story asking for recommendations for yarn stores in the area. And quite a few people have responded to me about this store called Pom Pom Girl. So this was another one that was already kind of on my radar that I had looked up. So I was like, perfect. It's near the general area we're going to. I'll stop in. So we stopped in on the day we arrived, which was the Friday. I spent like half an hour looking at all this beautiful yarn. They had some beautiful hand-dyed yarn, some brands that you can't get in North America, or at least where I am in Canada, which was really cool to see. And I was hit with such decision paralysis, and I didn't go in with any kind of pattern in mind. So on that day, I picked up the stitch marker, and that was it. And I basically said to my husband, I'm going to spend some time tonight just going through patterns and seeing what I might want to pick up yarn for. And then when we go back, I'll have a clearer idea and I can actually buy some yarn. So I did that. We went back the next day. I ended up picking two types of yarn. like I said, there were a lot of really nice hand-dyed skeins from brands that we can't really get here. But because it was hand-dyed yarn, it was more expensive. There were some beautiful colorways, but I didn't want to only get one skein of this souvenir yarn and then be able to maybe make a hat with it, and that's it. I wanted to be able to get some yarn that I could actually get a little bit more mileage out of. So that was why I ended up coming home with some yarn that I actually technically can get here. At least one of the yarns I picked up. So I ended up getting some tin line from Sandnes Garn. I picked up 5 balls of this. I have been wanting some for quite some time now, just because I've heard amazing things about this yarn as a summer fabric, but also in particular, I had a pattern in mind, which is the Umbria top by Cookie the Knitter. So I will hopefully cast that on this summer and get some redemption for my Cookie the Knitter patterns. But I picked up 5 balls of this color. I think online it's just called green. I can fix that if it is wrong, but the colorway is 8561. Like I said, I got 5 balls of this. It is just this kind of cool minty green, bluey kind of green color. And I am very excited to work with this. Like I said, I can technically get it at home, but I found the selection at my stores that carry line is not the greatest, just because once it's in stock, it very quickly goes out of stock. And this store had a ton, and it had some of the colors that I had been eyeing. So I just went for it. It was about 5 or 6 euros per ball. So a much more affordable yarn than some of the hand-dyed hanks that I was seeing. So I got some tin line. The other yarn I picked up is one that I have not seen in Canada, and I have heard tons about this brand just through watching knitting YouTube and Instagram, but have never worked with it before because I've never had access to it. And what I picked up was 3 balls of this Filcolana Arwetta, which is a sock yarn. But I got mine with the intention of knitting something a little bit different. Essentially picked this up because I thought it would be really nice for a little baby-sized sweater, potentially the storm sweater from PetiteKnit. So the next time I knit a little baby garment, I will have this Arwetta yarn to use. This is in a beige off-white color in the color number 977. Again, they had tons of really beautiful colors there, but for this particular project that I had in mind, I wanted kind of a white adjacent yarn. So I picked up this beige. I know it's not the most exciting color that I could have gotten. They had this other beautiful green that I was considering, but it was kind of close to this, and I didn't want to get 2 of the same color. It wouldn't have really mattered, but in my head, I thought it would be nice to get different color. So yeah, I got the most basic vanilla plain color of this sock yarn that you can get. But there was a lot of other Filcolana there as well that I was really intrigued by. But for example, the Peruvian Highland wool that they have was nice. Again, lots of nice color selection, but because we were abroad, I didn't have the most room in my bag to come home. We had some extra space because we brought some stuff over to family, but I didn't have like a sweater quantity of wool room in my backpack. So I went with some smaller skeins, and I'm excited for what these will potentially become, these 2 new yarns that I picked up. So both of them are new to me yarns. Obviously, this one I can get locally, but neither of these I've ever knit with before, so I am excited to try 2 new types of yarn. And especially the line, I've heard so much great stuff about it, and that it is just a nice fabric to have in the summer. As somebody who overheats very easily, I think having a nice linen cotton blend yarn will be just a nice change of pace. So that's all I have today in the way of updates. I did bring my husband's Moby Sweater Man with me on the trip, did not knit a single stitch of it. I just was not in the mood to be knitting anything complicated while we were like on the beach or in the plane or on a train. So I brought it because I thought maybe I'd have some downtime where I'd feel like doing some cables, but realistically, my knitting was very sporadic, just in between other things we were doing or while we were playing board games or sitting on the beach. So I didn't really have the desire to pull out a really complex cabled pattern. So that remains still in the same state as it was the last time I showed it to you. Again, something I'd like to have done for fall. Once I clear the Monday and the pall off my needles, that will, of course, be my next priority, because once I finish that, I also want to make myself the Dagmar jacket. Lots of big projects and ideas that I want to do, and so little time, and only two hands, unfortunately. So I'm doing what I can. I'm enjoying what I'm knitting on right now, which is really important for me. I think I went through a little bit of a knitting funk earlier this year and sort of slowed down quite a bit. So we're definitely out of the little slump now and feeling that good momentum. So I'm just knitting on whatever I feel like and what makes me happy. So anyway, long ramble as usual, but thank you so much for tuning into this podcast episode. As always, I really appreciate all of you for being here, for subscribing if you're subscribed, for following me on Instagram, all of the above. It means a lot that people choose to watch these videos that I'm putting out. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And I will see you in the next one.